It all began when Cyril, Anthea, Robert, Jane and the baby, whom everyone called the Lamb, moved to a white house in the country for the summer. Their mother and father had to go away on urgent business, so the children were left with Martha, the maid, and a large, exciting garden to play in. There were woods and fields, a greenhouse full of secrets, and most thrilling of all, a gravel pit that looked like a proper place for adventures. "Don't go near that gravel pit," Martha had warned. "It's not safe." But of course that made it even more tempting. One morning, after finishing their bread and milk much faster than usual, the children dashed out to explore. Anthea, the second oldest and most thoughtful, led the way. They decided to dig for treasure in the deepest part of the pit. Robert claimed he had read that Roman coins and skeletons could sometimes be found underground, and that was more than enough reason to start digging. They had just begun scooping sand with their hands when something soft and furry wriggled under the surface. "It's alive!" Jane squeaked. "Don't be silly, it's probably a hedgehog," said Cyril, though he didn't sound quite certain. Then out popped a strange creature with bat ears, wrinkled brown skin, and eyes that could stretch out on stalks and look in every direction. It sat up, blinked at them, and said crossly, "I wish you wouldn't. You've no idea how annoying it is to be woken up like this." The children stared. Robert managed to say, Are you magic?" "Of course I'm magic," it huffed. "I'm a Psammead. A sand fairy, if you like, and now that you've found me, I suppose you'll be wanting wishes." Wishes. The word made all their hearts thump with excitement. But the Psammead had rules. 1 wish per day and it would vanish at sunset. And you had to be very, very careful what you asked for. Still, the children could hardly wait. Their summer had just become a great deal more interesting. The next morning the children raced to the gravel pit, hardly able to wait. The Psammead was already awake, grumbling as usual. "Well," it said, "have you decided what ridiculous thing you want today?" They huddled to decide. Anthea thought it should be something useful. Robert wanted something exciting. But Jane, brushing the hair out of her face, said, "I wish we were all beautiful. Really beautiful." The boys groaned, but it was too late. The Psammead had already puffed itself up, squinted its eyes, and granted the wish. At first nothing seemed different. But when they looked at each other, really looked, they all gasped. Cyril's hair was smooth and golden, Robert's face was perfectly shaped like a prince in a storybook, and the girls looked like fairy queens. Even the baby looked like a cherub from a painting. "Well," said Anthea, trying to sound calm, "we do look beautiful." But being beautiful turned out to be rather inconvenient. When they walked through the village, people stared. Some whispered. Some frowned. A grocer dropped his apples. "Actors," someone muttered, "or foreigners." The worst part came when they tried to go home. Martha didn't recognize them. "You go away now," she snapped, shutting the door in their faces. "No peddlers here." They knocked and pleaded, but she was frightened by their strange, perfect faces. The children sat on the steps, miserable. "It's the wish," Cyril said gloomily. "It's gone all wrong." The sun sank lower and lower, and just as it touched the horizon, they felt something change. Their reflections in the window shimmered, and then they were themselves again. Familiar, ordinary, and very, very glad about it. Martha opened the door, cross and confused. "Where have you lot been? And look at your clothes." The children hurried inside, full of relief. "I don't want to be beautiful ever again," said Jane. The others agreed. Being beautiful, it seemed, was not nearly as fun as it sounded. After the Beauty Wish disaster, the children decided that today, they'd wish for something practical, something useful, something that couldn't possibly go wrong. "Money," said Cyril confidently. "Lots of it. Then we can buy anything we like and not depend on Martha's boring tea." So off they went to the gravel pit, where the Psammead was snoring under a mound of sand. "I wish we had as much gold as we could carry," Cyril declared when it finally woke up. The Psammead sighed, stretched its long whiskers, and granted the wish. Instantly the children's arms were full of heavy, shiny gold coins, piled in baskets, tumbling out of their pockets. "They're real!" Robert cried. "Proper coins!" "Let's go shopping," said Jane. So off they marched to the village, jangling with treasure. Anthea suggested they be sensible and buy useful things, but once they reached the shops, all sensible thoughts flew out the window. They bought buns, strawberries, lemonade, picture books, and even silk ribbons. They tried to pay with the gold coins, but that's when the trouble began. The baker squinted at the coin. "This isn't proper money," he said. The greengrocer refused to take it too. "Where'd you get this, eh? It's not even the right kind of gold." More and more shopkeepers gathered around, suspicious. "Counterfeiters!" someone shouted. "Call the constable!" The children panicked and ran, baskets banging against their knees, coins spilling everywhere. They darted through alleyways and hedges, finally hiding behind the churchyard wall, hearts thudding. "I thought gold would make everything easier," Robert panted. "Well, you try explaining to the police where you got 20 gold guineas from the year 1704, Cyril snapped. They waited and waited until the sun began to dip low in the sky. As soon as it touched the edge of the hill, the gold vanished. Poof, gone, just like the Psammead had promised. The children trudged home, empty-handed and full of crumbs. "That's 2 wishes gone wrong," said Anthea. "And not even a toffee to show for it," added Jane. By the 4th day, the children had learned something very important. Wishes were not nearly as simple as they sounded, but that didn't stop them from making more. "Let's wish for something fun this time," said Robert. "Something we can't get in trouble for," added Anthea. Jane's eyes lit up. "What if we could fly?" Everyone agreed, yes, flying sounded perfect. So off they ran to the gravel pit, where the Psammead was sulking in a shady spot. It was tired of granting wishes, but it grumbled, "Very well," and made its fur puff up like a dandelion. The moment the wish was granted, the children felt a tingling on their backs. They turned, and there they were, wings, great soft feathery ones unfolding from their shoulders like something out of a fairy tale. No one knew exactly how to use them, but they flapped and wobbled and after a few tries, lifted off the ground. Up, up, over the trees they soared, shouting with laughter. The fields looked like patchwork quilts, and the wind whooshed past their ears. "It's like being birds," Jane squealed. "It's better than being birds," Cyril called. "They don't have buns in their pockets." They flew for what felt like hours. They passed villages, farms, and flocks of confused sheep. Finally, they decided to land on a tall church tower to rest. But landing wasn't quite as easy as flying. They tumbled into a stone corner, bumping knees and elbows. "I'm starving," Robert groaned. "And thirsty," added Jane. "I wish we'd brought lemonade." Just then, someone shouted from below. A crowd had gathered, pointing up at them. "They think we're trapped," said Anthea. Soon the townspeople were bringing out ladders, ropes, and lots of questions. But the children couldn't explain how they'd flown up there. It wasn't exactly something you told strangers. "Say we're performers," Cyril whispered. "Traveling acrobats." From a circus, Robert added helpfully. But the grown-ups didn't seem convinced. A policeman was climbing the tower. "We've got to get out of here before someone grabs us," said Anthea. They looked up. The sun was already dipping low. "Quick, when it sets, the wings will vanish." And just like that, they did. Feathers fluttered and the children found themselves on the tower, wingless. Luckily, a ladder had been set up and they climbed down with the crowd clapping and cheering, thinking it had all been a clever trick. Back home, the children collapsed into chairs, sore, hungry, and very tired. "I liked flying," said Jane, yawning, "but I'm glad I don't have to sleep with wings on." "Agreed," said Cyril. "Let's wish for something nice and quiet next time." By this time, the children had learned a bit more about how tricky wishes could be, but it didn't stop Robert from dreaming big. "I want to live in a castle," he said one morning, "with knights and battles and everything." "Sounds exciting," said Cyril. "Well, I don't want to be under siege," said Anthea, but Robert was already running to the gravel pit. The Psammead looked up, blinking its strange eyes. "Very well," it said, "but don't come complaining to me." With a puff of sand and a sparkle, the children found themselves in a place that wasn't the gravel pit anymore. Instead, they stood inside a great stone castle with high walls, arrow slits, and towers reaching into the sky. "This is amazing," Jane whispered. They explored the castle, imagining they were kings, queens, and knights of old. They tried on helmets, marched up spiral staircases, and pretended to fight invisible enemies. But then, from far off, a noise like thunder rolled across the hills. "Look!" shouted Cyril. "Enemy soldiers!" Suddenly, the castle gates were banging, and voices shouted threats. The children realized that Robert's wish had brought them straight into the middle of a siege. Just like in the stories, they were trapped. Anthea's heart pounded. "What do we do?" They tried to hide in the great hall behind banners and suits of armor. The attackers shouted and threw stones. The castle shook. Robert wanted to charge out like a brave knight, but Anthea shook her head. "No, we're just children." Then Anthea had an idea. She went out to meet the attackers, holding up a white flag. "I'm the princess," she called, "and you don't need to fight. We're friends." The men were surprised. They lowered their weapons and listened as Anthea told them about the children and their strange adventure. Slowly the siege stopped. The enemy soldiers left and the castle grew quiet again. The children were relieved, but their adventure wasn't over. As the sun began to set, they felt the familiar tingling as the wish faded. The castle disappeared, and they found themselves back in the gravel pit. "That was too close," said Robert. "Yes, let's be careful with wishes from now on," said Anthea, looking serious. After their castle adventure, the children were beginning to realize that wishes could be tricky, but they were also getting bolder. Cyril, who loved stories about faraway places, said one morning, "I wish we were Red Indians, with a camp in the woods, hunting and living like they do." The Psammead snorted and blinked all 6 eyes. "Very well, but don't complain if it's not quite what you expect." With a puff of sand, the children found themselves suddenly dressed in feathers and beads. Their clothes were different, soft, colorful, and decorated with paint. Even the baby, the lamb, was wearing a tiny headband. They ran out of the gravel pit and into the woods, feeling wild and free. "We're really Red Indians now," cried Jane, waving a stick like a spear. They set up a camp near a quiet stream, made fires, and practiced hunting imaginary buffalo. They ran through the trees, jumping over logs and crawling through bushes. It was exciting at first. But soon the children noticed something else. The villagers nearby started to look worried. Some came too close, shouting and waving their arms. "Who are those strange children?" an old man asked. "Are they lost or troublemakers?" The children didn't understand the villagers' words, and the villagers didn't understand theirs. The baby lamb made a loud noise and everyone jumped. A group of men began to chase them through the woods. "Run!" shouted Cyril. The children darted through the trees, their feet pounding on leaves and twigs. It was all very thrilling, but also frightening. They hid behind bushes, tried to be as quiet as possible, and eventually they made their way back to the gravel pit, hearts pounding. Just as the sun began to set, their red Indian clothes vanished, and they were themselves again, tired, dirty, and relieved. "That was the best adventure yet," Robert said. "But I don't want to be chased by angry villagers again," said Anthea, brushing leaves out of her hair. The baby giggled, unaware of the trouble. The Psammead blinked sleepily. "Next time, try something less exciting," it said. The children nodded, but of course their wishes were far from over. By now the children were beginning to wonder what the final wish might bring. They'd had so many adventures, but the baby, little lamb, hadn't had a wish of his own yet. One morning Anthea said quietly, "Maybe we should wish for something nice for the baby." The Psammead blinked at them with tired eyes. "Make it a good one," it said, "because it'll be your last." After some thinking, they all agreed. The baby should grow up. Not just a little, but enough to be able to run and play with them properly. So they gathered around the gravel pit and said together, "We wish the baby would grow up." The Psammead gave a little grunt and puffed its fur. Suddenly the lamb wasn't a baby anymore. Instead, he was a little boy, able to speak, run, and join in their adventures. "Look at me," he said, laughing. "I'm a big boy now." The children cheered. It was wonderful to have their youngest finally able to play like them. But growing up so fast came with surprises. The new little boy wanted to explore everywhere, and he was full of energy. The children had to watch him carefully to keep him safe. They played hide and seek in the garden, raced through the woods, and even tried to catch butterflies. It was the happiest they'd been all summer. Yet the children knew the magic was running out. The Psammead was quieter now, less grumpy, but also more serious. "Remember," it said, "once the last wish is used, I must go away." They promised to make the most of the time left. At sunset the magic faded and the Psammead disappeared back into the sand. The children looked at each other, a little sad but full of memories. The baby was no longer a baby and summer would soon be over. But they had learned that wishes were powerful, and that sometimes the best adventures came from being together. After all their adventures, the children knew the magic was nearly over. The Psammead had been grumpy but kind, and the children had come to like it, even if it was a bit snappy sometimes. One day the Psammead looked very sad. "I'm tired," it said, "and I don't want to disappear alone in the sand." The children felt sorry for their little magical friend. They decided to use their final wish to help it. "What shall we wish for?" asked Anthea. "To keep the Psammead safe," said Robert. They went to the gravel pit, gathered close, and said together, "We wish to rescue the Psammead and keep it safe." The Psammead blinked its long eyes in surprise. "Really?" it said. "You don't want me to vanish?" "No," said Cyril. "We want you to stay but not trapped in the sand." Suddenly, with a puff of golden sand, the Psammead was free. It stretched and shook off the dust, looking much happier. "You've done something very kind," it said softly. Most people just use me for wishes and forget I have feelings. The children smiled. They felt proud to have helped their friend. Now, said the Psammead, I must go away for a while, but not forever. It's okay, said Jane. We'll remember you. The Psammead gave a little bow, then vanished, leaving behind just a small pile of sand. The children looked at each other. They had finished their wishes and learned something important. Magic was wonderful, but friendship was even better. That summer they didn't just have adventures. They made a friend. After the Psammead vanished, the children felt a quiet stillness settle over the gravel pit. No more wishes, no more magical surprises, just the soft sound of birds and the gentle rustling of leaves. They sat together on the grass, watching the sun dip low in the sky. It feels strange without the Psammead, said Anthea, sighing. But it's nice to be back to normal too, said Robert. No more surprises popping up out of nowhere. Jane nodded. I think I'll miss the adventures, but I'm glad we're all safe and sound. The baby, now a little boy, played quietly nearby, chasing butterflies and laughing softly. Their summer was winding down, and soon they would return to the city, to school, and to their usual lives. But the children had changed. They weren't just the same 5 kids anymore. They were a little braver, a little wiser, and more grown up. I think the best part, said Cyril, was just being together, whether we had wishes or not. Yes, said Anthea. We don't need magic to have fun. We have each other. As the stars began to twinkle, the children packed their things, ready to leave the gravel pit behind. Before they walked away, they looked back one last time. Goodbye, Psammead, whispered Jane. Thank you for everything. The gravel pit was peaceful now, as if it knew it had done its job. And the children knew that some memories, like magic, last forever.